But it does say we have the kind of low road, if you like, Santa's language. We have the low road, low economic growth, low investment patterns, continued unemployment, and the social pathologies that we live with. Rampant child abuse, rampant women abuse, unemployment, inequality levels, etc. That's your future, unless you cut the deal. That's the point about it, unless you cut the deal. And my argument to the unions is it's in your interest to cut this deal, because while it might not give you the end product, it at least gives you some potential to get a better outcome for the short term than what we have, what we're looking towards here. Now the question you ask is about the civil society. I think there's much that is positive in civil society. I think that civil society is precisely its plurality that allows you to create the checks and balances in favor of development. My story is this: political elites don't deliver under any conditions unless they're forced to. And they're forced to by two factors. When they become uncertain about their futures, they then have the incentive to deliver. And two things make them deliver. Two things create that uncertainty. One is the prospect of losing power. The second is the mobilization of civil society. It is precisely those two things that make them nervous enough to cut the deal. We had the most radical conversations on economic policy when Mbeki and Zuma were fighting. Once Zuma consolidated his power, the prospects began to slightly erode. It is precisely the potential of loss of power and civic mobilization that brings that together. And by the way, this doesn't apply to the political elites. It applies to the Vice-Chancellor Wits. You know, one of the things that you confronted, and I'm confronted with conflicting demands, one of the things I often said is that actually it is precisely the mobilization on the left, whether it's students, whether it's unions, etc., that keeps you in your toes. To say you have to move slightly more, you have to cut a real deal, otherwise they are potential. So I think that that is the check. The debate in civil society, however, is a false one. Because within civil society, the debate is there's a bunch of NGOs who think the social movements are a bunch of mad guys who are completely have nothing to do with the development project, and you have to be inclusion. You speak to the large number of social movement activists, and I count there are people in the book who think that NGOs are sellouts. And actually the argument is that both of you are quite necessary in this context. By the way, there's a third layer of associational life that is completely independent of this. They survivalist agencies in civil society, and it speaks about that. And so, do I not speak about the fact that there is a big discourse happening around rethinking social life? Yes, I'm aware of it, but the project here is looking at how do you create the countervailing forces that create the balance of power that put political elites on tenterhooks. And that's the part I'm looking at. The other guys who are looking at a much more longer term project, which is to reconceptualize social life in its entirety, I'm supportive of. But in the short term, it's not going to contribute to the kinds of balance of power that we're talking about. So that's where I'll stop. And then, Carl, if you want to take it more broadly.
Great. Thanks, Adam, and thanks, Jackie. You can see the kinds of wild debates and clashes that take place at Wits between the scholars and the professor managers and so on, played out also in these kinds of debates. But thanks for a really robust and interesting discussion. I'm sure it's better than any other engagement that we've had around this book, Adam. I should hope.
It's been interesting.
I've been told to just the books are on sale outside. Not only Adam's books, but other books as well from Wits University Press at a 20% discount. Card facilities are available. A book by Jackie is also on sale there. A book by me is also on sale there. So, and there are other books, of course, as well. But I invite you not to try and buy them now, because we're going to, you can rush out, grab your liquid refreshment, rush in, and then we have some further engagement from the floor with Adam. So you can buy afterwards. So time to rush. Unfortunately, our time is not, we don't have a lot of time, which is why I'm trying to put pressure on you to sit down, just let them know so we can move to the next phase. We're going to move now to questions and comments from the floor. Can I have a first round of hands? Yes, yeah. Can I have a first round of hands, please? I've got one hand. Can I have another hand, please? Can I have another hand, please? Okay, Norma.
Sorry, I'm rushing off to that centre of class compromise in Nedlac quickly.
That's good, by the way.
See, seems to me there's a contradiction in saying that we can't have revolution, but that the ruling class is running scared. Well, of course the ruling class is running scared. So why does that mean that we should then look for some kind of class compromise to get them out of the problem that they're running scared from? That cannot be what the labour movement and the working class is about. And you see, things to Polokwane happened. We all danced off thinking this is it. But then two things happened after Polokwane. One was Mangaroon, where Polokwane was ditched unceremoniously. And then in August 2012, 30 mine workers were mowed down by the forces of the ruling class. Now, my point is that we love our moments here. We talk about our Lula moment. My union, NUMSA, says we prefer a Freedom Charter moment. But whatever the moment is, those two occurrences marked a moment in our history. And one of the issues that we are grappling with in NUMSA at the moment is that they actually mark a watershed. Are we now in a pre-revolutionary moment? Revolutions don't happen overnight. Are we in 1905? We're not saying we're in 1917. We're saying, is this 1905? And that is how we are looking to characterise where we are now. So it seems to me that this is the worst or the last possible moment for us now to look to class compromise. And it's certainly not something that NUMSA would ever be prepared to look at. And one of the reasons for that is on the ground, and it was mentioned by Jackie. You see, I would love somebody who puts forward a position of a pact to go to a garage. We've just signed a good agreement. But there are chars in garages who, after that agreement, will be earning something like R11.50 an hour. And I'd love someone to go and say to them, sorry, we're going to cap people at R2 million a year. It's meaningless to them. They still earn R10.50. Unless it is a redistribution of wealth from those people who are earning the 2 millions to the people on the R10.50, there will never be a social pact. But also, I'm not convinced why we would want to. Our role is to overthrow the ruling class, not protect them from their own folly. That's I apologise, my trusted husband will bring
Okay, there's a hand right at the back there.
Hi, I'm Robert from Centre for Applied Legal Studies.
Right.
I'm not really an expert on it, but I've been noticing increasing conflict and suspicion, say, within the trade union movement and recent fragmentation. So to the extent, as I understand it, a social pact is easier when say the parties to the pact, the social forces are each more unified. So to what extent do you believe there will be serious fragmentation, and if so, to what extent will it make it harder to achieve a social democratic social pact, which you hope for? Thanks.
Great. Have we got any other hands for this round? Yeah.
Hi. I would like to know.
If you can stand and speak that way.
Sure. People want to hear. Okay.
Hi, Lydia Polgreen from the New York Times. I was at the launch of the EFF on Sunday. Impressive crowd, lots of passion, a pretty searing critique of the ruling elite. How do you see the emergence of this party and its use of the Americana moment shaping the sort of political future over the next couple of years?
Great. 3 great questions. Over to Adam.
I want to start with Norma.
Sorry, all questions to be brief, all answers to be brief.
I want to start with Norma's question because I do think it sets the backdrop to the book itself. And the book's first chapter is about what is the moment. And Norma suggested that the moment may really be 1905 Russia. My fear, it's 1920s Germany, that we're looking at the Weimar Republic. And that's the real danger, the social integration, disintegration of society. And frankly, if I thought we were on the cusp of the revolutionary moment, you're right. I'd say, bugger the deal, let's go for the whole thing. But I don't think we're on that cusp. In fact, I think you're in a very dangerous moment. I think you're in a moment where you might have a semblance that there's a mobilization at the roots. But there's a counter-reaction emerging at the apex and within the ANC itself. And there's a group within the ANC that are now talking about developing a much more, I wouldn't use the word militaristic, but I would imagine authoritarian agenda is on the cards. And I think that that's something that isn't widespread within the ANC, but I can promise you that it's a thought process that is beginning to emerge. And for me, that's the real question. I don't think we're close to 1905. I don't think the labor movement is as strong as it is, and I think it's making the same mistake that it made in 1992 and 1993, where it thought it was much stronger than it was, and it got hammered in the subsequent years. I think the possibilities are there for a deal. And I think the deal is in the labor movement's interest. Because if we don't make that deal, I think if you cut a deal that is more inclusive, and I think it's in the elite's interest to do so, but if you don't do that, we run the real risk of going down Weimar Republic. We run the real risk of a social disintegration. We run the real risk of a polarization. And we run the real risk of, not immediately, continued disintegration for the next couple of years, and in 5, 6, 7 years, the real possibilities of an authoritarian track emerging in the South African country. That is the real danger. And that's where I think people are making the mistake. Now the question is, the person from CALS is right. I think that the disintegration of the movements, of the various social forces, runs the real risk of the pack can't be cut the deal. One of the other preconditions of a pack is you must have a coherent body that can articulate that. And until very recently, we did have a bit of that. I suspect that the current divisions within COSATU are serious enough to suggest, which takes me to the question that you posed, the postcard, would I write it exactly the same? I hinted about the dangers of what was happening in COSATU in the divisions, in the book. I say it very clearly. And I said, actually in the long term, the alliance is going to break. The book says that. But I didn't think the divisions would be so deep and so quick and so intense as they've emerged the last 9 months. It's been really fascinating at one level, how deep the divisions have become so quickly. And so the book had imagined it in a slightly longer term view, rather than in the kind of accelerated view that has emerged around the union movement. And I think it's a real danger. And I think it weakens the trade union movement in quite dramatic ways, and ultimately it weakens the developmental project. The EFF is an interesting thing. I think that the EFF, a lot of people are saying that the EFF is going to take all kinds of votes away. And I think that, I'm not so sure. I think that there's two things against the EFF. One is social organization. you can't really become a coherent party. This is one of the, unless you actually have organization across the country. And that's something that they don't have. They very astutely have utilized the Marikana movement, and they might very well win the Marikana district as in the elections. But is it likely that they would have the kind of national feel? No, I think there's a second thing. I think the second thing is a group, there is question marks about an enrichment exercise who are now, politicians now simply using in a kind of quite a hypocritical way, advancing the radical agenda when they were part of enrichment and all of those kinds of things. I think there's another group, however, within the EFF, who are more radical, who are more committed to the development project. And they think we can use Julius Malema because he's not smart enough, and so we can just control the scene from behind. I think it's a very, very dangerous thing. I think that's exactly what the communists thought in Polokwane. Zuma, he's a better, we can deal with him, he's not that smart, we'll control him from behind. And he's turned out to be far more astute than people imagine, and I'm telling you, Malema is far more astute than people give him credit for. And I think it's a very dangerous left strategy, which is, we'll use the guy there, we'll get the guy there, and we'll kind of control the scene from behind. I think it's a dangerous, dangerous move.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, there's Jane at the back. Jane?
Jane Barrett from Kusatu. Adam, I just wanted to go back to your comments about the economic chapter of the NDP. Because that chapter lies at the heart of Kusatu and the union's critique of the NDP. And as the famous saying goes, it's the economy, stupid. So if the economic chapter is problematic, what flows from that is all the wonderful aspirations in the education chapter, in the climate change chapter, and so on, just fall flat because they can't be achieved if, as the economic chapter unfolds, the premises are basically a repeat of the neoliberal agenda. And that's where, we would argue that there is a similarity and a continuity between GEAR and the NDP. So, for example, the assumption is that if you just stimulate industry, there's going to be a decent trickle-down effect. And our critique is that won't happen. That what we need is radical intervention at the bottom that challenges the basis of the economy, which is premised on low pay. And that we need policies that promote increases in incomes through social grants, through a basic income grant, through a national minimum wage, and so forth. And so there's quite a sophisticated critique of that chapter. And I think you're being unfair to sort of rubbish the trade union critique of the NDP on the basis that it's unrealistic. It's a very, very detailed critique of the economic agenda, and everything else flows from that.
Kimani here, and then
Kimani Dungu. Two quick ones, Carl.
why don't you talk in that direction?
Okay. Thank you. Two quick things. The first one is that Adam, the kind of compromise that I hear Adam calling for sounds to me very much like the post-World War II compromise. But the objective conditions that we have now are very different from what was there immediately after the war. So I do not see the connection. And secondly, and very quickly, I think we have a multiplicity of voices that contend for the direction of the economic policy of this country. And no wonder we have IPAP 1, Industrial Policy Action Plan 1, IPAP 2, NGP, NDP, which all are a reflection of the kind of contending political voices that we have within the ANC. So no wonder we really don't have one economic policy. And I'm not sure if the NGP, no, the NDP is a consolidation of those voices. Certainly it's not. Thank you.
Thanks, Kimani. And then Pat.
Thank you. Jane has said many of the things I was going to say, and I'm sorry if COSATU seems to be monopolising this discussion. But I would like to refer to the pact as something which, and I apologise to those who've heard this analogy many times before, but I think it's still relevant, to the breakfast pact, in which the employers, the elite, agree that they will be the chickens and lay the eggs, provided the workers agree to be the pig and provide the bacon. And of course, as we all know, the big difference is the chickens go on to live a happy life, the pig